Hello, everybody. Welcome into our latest live broadcast. It's Friday, the 5th of July, 2024. My name is CareyHolzman, and today we've got a YouTube exclusive. Well, it's currently an exclusive, although I'm sure in no time other people will be showcasing this mini PC, brand new from Minisforum, called the UH125 Pro. And we'll talk about what makes it so different and interesting and very, very affordable here in just a minute. But first, hello to all of my friends, all my friends there in blue and all the members. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We started an hour later than normal because of some overlap that was going on here. But the good news is we still have our regular full-time regular schedule as far as the show will not be reduced in length because we started a little later. It'll be a normal length show. Of course, thanks to our friends at Minisforum for sending the unit to us so that we can get a early review of it before others get it. Now, there are some changes happening to the channel regarding YouTube's dismissal of free video payments. Essentially, people watching videos for free are effectively, I've been talking about this for some time, but I want you to let you know what's happening. The viewers who watch content for free, YouTube has devalued you almost to nothing, unfortunately, at least on my channel. And what that means is that moving forward, all live videos will be, unless they're sponsored by a company, in this case, Minisforum has sent us the unit, although they're not sending us any money, they are sending us the unit in exchange for review. In that case, the live video is open to all. What will end up happening are the people who enable this channel to exist will be the ones who will be watching the live content or have the ability to. And then after the live content is aired within about a day or two or three, that will be posted up on the regular side of the channel, not the live side. And then I think after about 30 days, then those live videos can become public. The problem is the amount of money it's costing. It's unfortunate that I'm essentially paying people to watch my videos. That's what it's come to. So I'm trying to find ways that we can keep the channel up and running without letting the viewers who don't contribute just completely shut us down. It's almost to the point where, and this is just the reality of it, but it's almost to the point where if we don't start taking on sponsorships, we have to find other ways to compensate for the costs of making the videos. And that's just the harsh reality of it. Now, if everything turns around, of course, we'll put things back. But in the meantime, I'm just doing what I can to keep the ship afloat. And the content will still be available, but the live interaction will be reduced in order to reduce the amount of distraction and the people who don't get it. Typically, the people that cause the most trouble are the ones who just don't contribute. And we don't need them here, quite frankly. And if I'm paying money for them to be here, I don't want to spend that money anymore, on unwelcome guests. So that's why you'll notice some changes with regards to members-only content in the live section. But rest assured, you won't be missing anything. You just won't get it as early as the members get it. That's all. That's really all it is. And hopefully that will offset the negative balance where I can, continue. Again, we're still working on Studio C. We got a big investment there. And it's still got a long way to go. So the amount of money that's going into this is astronomical. I don't want this to be about the money. I want this to be about the content. But more importantly, I want the content to be for people who appreciate and have gratitude for receiving it. Those who know better should start their own YouTube channel or voluntarily click away on something they voluntarily click to. Don't complain to me about your bad choices. If you click on my videos and you don't like them, well, that's your fault. But anyway, I've just, I've been dealing with this for a long time. But now when it's costing me money to pay essentially for these folks to come and harass me, we've now reached a point with YouTube where that's no longer sustainable. So you will notice these changes. And for members, as far as members are concerned, they won't see anything any differently. As far as members are concerned, everything stays the same. Okay, so it's only the non-contributors, the non-members, who will notice the difference. And I think, and I'm hopeful that that will solve the financial, it'll reduce my cost, as well as encourage people who haven't been supporting, who do value the content but don't pay for it. Maybe this is what it'll take to get them on board, or, you know, I'm just out of ideas at this point. And I hope that things will turn around, but I don't know that it's going to turn around for another year, year and a half. And I just want to make sure I'm still making videos, that I'm not putting myself out of the video business by continuing to make the videos freely at my own expense, and to have a small percentage of those viewers actually support the channel. So that's what's going on right now. I've also heard that the VIP CDK deals folks have got some issue they're working out with PayPal. So my understanding is the PayPal payment process over at VIP CDK deals is currently unavailable, but it's my understanding their intention is to resolve whatever the issue is. We don't have a timeline on that. Finally, when it came to the Ace Magic mini PC, the Starship, I told you I'd look into how to upgrade the hard drive, or the solid state drive, and the RAM. Well, it turns out the entire unit has to be disassembled. There is no easy way to do it, and it's very easily damaged. So if you want to order that machine, make sure you get it the way you want it spec'd out. Or unless you're very, very comfortable taking things that are very tiny and delicate apart, and you have the right tools and patience for it, stay away from it, because it is not user serviceable. Ace Magic has changed their tune. The website regarding upgradable RAM and storage on that specific mini PC, all of that information has been removed. They don't say you can't do it, but they used to promote that you could. Anything that implies that you can upgrade the SSD or the storage on the Starship PC has been completely removed from the website. That's going to be strike two for Ace Magic as far as I'm concerned, because, you know, first we had the virus issue. That could happen to anybody. Now we've got an issue where they're selling a very expensive machine that is not user serviceable for RAM and SSD, despite the fact that they promoted it could be. So let's hope we don't have any more surprises in a negative way from Ace Magic the rest of this year. Otherwise, I'll have to take steps to protect my integrity. So I'm hopeful that this is the last of the oversights. It may not be. I'm just putting you in my head, you know, I don't want to showcase products here intentionally that I don't think deserve our time or attention. And Ace Magic's is right there on the edge right now. They're so close. So that's why I'm so thrilled and excited to work with Minisforum. This company has never let me down. We've never had any of these issues. And their products are always quality and always very well priced. And you can often buy bare bones versions of their products where you can put in your own RAM and your own storage, and you don't have to buy it with whatever minimal RAM and storage configuration, you know, to save money and then turn around and pull that right out as soon as you get it. You can save your money. If you're one of those people that wants to put in your own RAM and your own storage, Minisforum has a lot of machines you can buy bare bones, meaning your own storage, your own RAM, you must provide it along with your own operating system. So we appreciate that they do that, and we also appreciate the quality of the machines and consistency of the unique designs, and everything from the thermals to the fan noise to the design itself, and of course the pricing. So today we're going to look at their latest mini PC, the UH125 Pro. Now I talk about the i7s of yesteryear are like the i5s of today. The i5 processor is no slouch. The reason you've seen me build a lot of Intel i5 processor-based builds is because it's the best bang for the buck, and most common ordinary users have absolutely no idea if they have an i7 and i5. They don't even know what that means. All they know is this thing is rocking fast and was a great price. So the fact that this uses the new Ultra 5, we're off to a good start. And you're going to see for yourself just how crazy powerful the i5 line is, especially if you've been using computers for a while and you're familiar with the past versions of i7 and what we thought was fast. Now, the other thing I want you to keep in mind is we have a lot of viewers of not only of different cultures around the world, but of different experiences. But we do sometimes attract the enthusiasts, and the enthusiasts are the ones that want to do these obscure things that the bulk of the population has no interest in. So I don't cater to them because a lot of YouTube channels already cater to them. Anybody who thinks that the machine's not fast enough, anybody who thinks the machine doesn't run cool enough, anybody who thinks that, you know, they need to run some obscure operating system, we're not the channel for them, right? These are and there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. It's just that as a person that runs a real business in computer repair, I don't get those customers, and I don't want those customers. They're too much trouble, they're too finicky, and then when you ask them how to justify these needs, they don't really have any justification. They just say, because that's what I want. And that's fine. I mean, if you want that, that's a legitimate reason. But I'm accustomed to dealing with businesses, right? So to give you an example, if an enthusiast or a home user says, is Windows 11 any good? Like, that whole process doesn't work in my brain. If you were, and just to use an example, we're going to start this in a minute, but I just want to make a point, and I want you to think about this. If you have a job, and I'm going to assume the people who ask, is Windows 11 any good, do not have jobs, and that could be because they're retired, or it could be that the job they have is not in an office. But if you have a typical office job, you're going to be sitting at a computer the office provides. Whether or not you like the operating system the office uses is of no concern to anybody. If you want to work here, these are the tools we use. This is what you will use. I don't care if you like it. If you don't like it, you can quit. So when I hear somebody say, is this any good? I have two thoughts that enter my mind. One, okay, if you're working at a job, there's a reason why you're getting paid to do your work. And if you're using Windows 11 at work, it makes sense that you would use Windows 11 at home. If you absolutely despise Windows 11 and turn your nose up at it, but you still have to go to work with Windows 11, there's nothing you're going to say that's going to change the world. It's just never going to happen. You can quit your job if it really bothers you that much, or, you know, you can go with the flow, right? So that's your choice. I'm the kind of person, I like to go with the flow. It's just less exhausting. Now, when it comes to businesses need to get work done. Businesses need to help their customers. So whether or not you have a job, you are a customer, and you expect to be treated a certain way within a certain period of time. And that's being done by employees, and those employees are using computers. Now, do you care if they're using Windows 11 as the customer? Of course you don't. And do you think they care as the employee what their office uses? They're getting paid the same either way. What do they care? So when a home user asks these questions, they're irrelevant questions that don't make any sense to me. When home users, when they want to say, well, can I put 128 gigs of RAM in this? Very rarely can they ever justify any logical reasoning behind why you would waste your money for that with no actual use case scenario that matters to anybody, other than, I guess they just want to. You know, it's just an emotional thing, not a logical thing. And again, that's perfectly acceptable, but that doesn't run my business. People don't call my business and ask me to do things for typically anything other than trying to get something done, right? So one of the things you'll hear me say over and over again when people ask questions that I don't quite understand is, what is it you're trying to get done? In other words, okay, so you want to know if you can put 128 gigs of RAM in, but I want to know, what are you going to do with 128? Why do you need that? Because a lot of times the customers are actually trying to do something entirely different, and they're under the impression that by adding this RAM, it's going to accomplish that task, or whatever the question happens to be. And so often when we break it down and figure out what's the goal you're trying to accomplish, instead of asking me how to fix this, tell me what the problem is and utilize my experience so I can help you find the fastest, efficient, most efficient, cheapest resolution to resolving the issue. But if the issue is all in your head, you've just convinced yourself that's what you want, there's nothing I'm going to say that makes a difference. So it's a pointless question anyway. You're going to do what you're going to do, and you're not my customer. So I would typically try and talk you out of it if I don't believe that that's a good investment if you were a customer. But as a home user, I see people, here in the chat room spending their money on things where it's so foreign to me. It's really weird because in the world that I work in, it's very rare to see anybody do things that I'm seeing people mention on YouTube. And please be aware that if you want the consideration, then offer the same in return, because the world goes around based on business. All the revenue that gets generated and the money you're spending to buy emotional need computer items, generally that's generated through business. So if you don't have the business side of things, there's no money. There just isn't there. So I think it's important for me, as somebody who does computer repair for a living, to make sure that I'm working primarily with businesses, because they're not screwing around. They pay their bills. They absolutely come to me for solutions. They don't tell me what the solution is. They say, hey, we have this problem. We need you here now. We can't help our customers. This is a big, serious problem. Versus, hey, my fan's making some noise. You know what I mean? Like the likelihood of how frequently an end user calls you for help, the limited budget they have, and then how demanding they can be over things that appear to be, from a business perspective, very, very petty. Again, they can be, from my perspective, as long as they're paying the bill. They can care about, maybe they don't want to dust their own computer or clean it, and they want to hire me to do it. But for the most part, people don't do that. So I want you to understand the channel you're watching is based on the business decisions of both running a computer repair business and owning any business at all, and why certain decisions are made with regards to practicality, budget, reliability, and security, versus let's add some lights and liquid coolers and overclock, which is all just silly waste of time and money, in my opinion. When we do builds with RGB and liquid cooling and stuff like this is pandering. That's all that is. I personally would never own a machine like this, but because I'm a YouTube content creator and this is what people want to see, I'll build it. I don't have a single business customer that has anything like this. And if I sold them anything like that, they'd probably fire me. And since I don't want to be unemployed, there are two separate worlds. And unfortunately, I think it's unfortunate that YouTube seems to cater only to this, and the people who actually work in the industry that provides the money so people can buy this, they're not very well represented here. And that's the gap I'm trying to fill. So anybody who's new here can understand what to expect from this channel. Because if you want all the same old nonsense, it's plenty of it here on YouTube. If you're looking for something more practical and more realistic in the line of what actually matters to the world outside of your bubble, you've come to the right place. So when I review PCs like this Minisforum, this doesn't have any RGB on it. And this is kind of I would call this a one-size-fits-all PC. So unless you have extraordinarily finicky PC demands and you have a wallet that can back those demands up, this computer is likely going to be ideal for 95% of people's needs who use computers, whether at home or in the office. Now, we're going to talk about that here in a minute, but first, let me say thank you to the people contributing here in the chat room. I've missed a few of these, so I'm going to just jump over here and say, I got some catching up to do. $10 from Matthew Burden says, good afternoon, Carey and chat. Happy Friday. Thank you, Matthew. Nick Caffrey renews his membership, now a member for 6 months. Right on. Thank you, Nick. He says hello to Mara in the chat, and with a €5 super chat in there as well. So he's looking forward to hear about this machine. Yes, and I'm about to tell you about it. Thank you, Nick. Jose Lopez contributes $2. He says, good to see you, Carey. We're back at you, Jose. Thank you. Peter VZ joining us from Amsterdam with a €1 super chat. Ben Laird with £2 contributed in super chat, joins us all the way from Scotland. Our friend Ron Barnish became a member. Thank you, Ron. Greg Casabona with a $20 super chat. I am confused. Ron Barnish shows he's a new member, and then it shows he's a member for 23 months. That's weird. Thank you, Ron. Again, Craig Casabona with a $20 super chat. Rice Star Man with a $10 super chat says hello. Hope you had a good 4th of July. Oh, yes. Getting a lot of work done over at Studio C. David Graham with a $5 super chat. Did you enjoy fireworks in the outdoors last night? No, it was 114 degrees outside. I stayed indoors. But I did see some fireworks. I certainly heard them and felt them all the way till 2 o'clock in the morning. But it was a good, productive day to getting some things done. And thank you for the super chat. Hope you all had a good, safe 4th of July, an enjoyable one. Brian One Full in Canada joins us and contributes $1 Canadian, and 3D Everything with a $10 super chat. Says, hey, Carey. Thank you, 3D Everything, and Ryan, and David, and Rice Star Man, and Ron Barnish. Thank you all, Peter, for your contributions and your support. I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our friends Oystein in Norway and Buster in Scotland. These folks are extraordinarily generous, as is Frankie B out there in New York, with helping support the channel in I don't even know how to describe it, but just extraordinarily generous folks. You can't thank them enough. And all of you as well. There's Dave Stetzel joining us, says hello, welcome in, Dave. And yeah, I think we're good and we can start talking about the UM125 Pro. So I think I want to start, first of all, let's go to the Minisforum website and see what they say about it. I will tell you, again, I believe in full disclosure. I have taken this out of the box and updated it with the latest Windows updates, so that's going to save us an hour. This does have Windows 11 Home, and when I did not have it hooked up to a network going through the first power on out-of-box experience, it did not require a network connection. The option was enabled to say I don't have a network connection, so I did not have to do the Shift F10 thing. I appreciate that. So overall, it wasn't missing all that many updates. However, again, I have a slow internet connection. It did take about an hour to get it fully updated. Then I just put it all back in the box. So I've left it, aside from updates, I haven't done anything else to it. You will know when I take something out of the box, or any product reviewer takes out a mini PC. Usually almost everything is wrapped in plastic. The plastic on the power adapter and the unit itself, I had to remove. I'm not going to put it back on to try and fool you. So you'll see anything still in plastic that I remove is something I've never taken out of the plastic before. And that's a good indicator when you're watching any YouTube channel. If you're being lied to or deceived by the content creator, with some exceptions, sometimes the content creator may receive a used product, or could be an error in editing. But regardless of that, we are live here, unscripted and unrehearsed, so I can give everything to you in the real world sense, as though you were hanging out with me right here in Studio B. This is about as close as we can make a real life interaction using today's technology. So now, going forward and looking at the UH125 Pro, let's go to the window capture here on OBS, which is right here. So what makes this thing so special? Well, first of all, I want you to look at the price. Let's start with the price. $439. So you're probably thinking $439, that's probably a decent mid-grade machine. Keep reading. This is the latest Intel Core Ultra 5 processor. The Ultra processors have the neural processing units, or NPUs, required for AI processing locally. So that may not be a big deal to most of you right now, but it's likely going to be. Now at that price, that's going to be the bare bone price, okay? So the unit we have here was sent to us with 32 gigs of RAM and a 1 terabyte SSD. Now you can see that adds $200 onto the price. Now, if you price out a 1 terabyte SSD and 32 gigs of RAM, I think you'll find it's a lot more than $200. However, be that as it may, if you want to provide your own, you will also have to provide your own operating system. Okay, so just bear that in mind. When you order it with a solid state drive and RAM, you also get Windows 11 Home. All Minisforum mini PCs come with Windows 11 Home. So what makes this PC so special? Well, let's talk about the processor for a minute. This is a 14-core processor. It's 18 threads. Yeah, 18 threads. Tell me again how many threads your 7th generation or 8th generation i7 has, or even your 10th generation i7. This is an i5. It can hit 4.5 gigahertz. It's got something called phase change, which is their advanced cooling technology or heat dissipation. Then things start getting really interesting. Dual 5 gig Ethernet ports. Think about that for a minute. If you know that we can do SMB3 multi-channel, that means we could use both of those ports on an equivalent capable switch and NAS, etc., and run 2 cables at the same time, each running 5G. In theory, if you had that ability, some of us, I mean, it's not like the technology doesn't exist. It's just most of us don't even have 2.5 at this point. But instead of 2.5, you're getting 5. And instead of getting 1, you're getting 2 of those. And combined, that's 10 gigabits per second. 10 gigabits per second. Even I don't have anything I could run that quickly. I don't have a 5 gig switch. I don't have a 5 gig NAS. So this is really setting you up for the future. Or for right now, if you're somebody who always has the latest and greatest and has high throughput demands. The Wi-Fi is 6E, so it's not 7, but we're not seeing a wide adoption of 7. And quite honestly, I see very few people in the real world as consumers or businesses alike that see any real benefit from anything greater than Wi-Fi 6. So 6E and 7 right now, they're really ideal for people who just want the latest and don't really understand what they're buying. And they're ideal for a very small fraction of people who have the money to spend, as well as the need for Wi-Fi 7, which is maybe 3% or less of all computer owners, in my experience. The RAM is DDR5, and the SSD, the NVMe, is Gen 4. And we'll get into that here in a minute. We've got a, I believe this is a USB 4 dock here that Minisforum sells. And that we'll get in, we're going to have to take a look at that, because if we scroll back up, let's go back up for just a second, you'll see frequently bought together. And if you were wondering what this little guy was right here, that is your GPU dock if you wanted to put an external GPU on this. $100, super cheap. Now, I mean, you're probably going to spend, if you took that dock and this PC and your monitor and your keyboard and your mouse and your speakers and your software and you added it all up, it'll likely still be less than whatever GPU you're going to buy and put in this. So the GPU, the part people aren't scrutinizing as much, is going to set you back, 2 to 3 to 4 times more than what the computer cost. Now, this isn't available yet. This won't be available till August, middle of August. We'll just say the fall. And when it comes out, we'll see if we can get our hands on one. But in the meantime, they do show it pictured here, if you were wondering what this was. And then if we continue scrolling down, there's a little bit here of a breakout with regards to how this is put together. So you've got your main circuit board, just like everything else, right? And then you've got a cooling fan that appears to be for the RAM and SSD, and it looks like the CPU is on the same side. Is that right? We'll open it up in a bit here and we'll take a look. Fan noise is less than 37 dB. and 3 heat pipes. All that sounds good. And then we've got a little bit more about the NPU and the cooling system. The case has a Copilot button. I don't know if anybody's going to use that, but there does also appear to be, I was thinking the external GPU was USB 4, but it's OCulink. So when it comes to hooking up an external GPU, USB is one of the slowest ways that it works. Thunderbolt would be the second slowest way, and then OCulink could be the fastest way that we have available, which is still not going to represent the performance if it were directly plugged into the computer. Anytime you've got to use one of these ports, you will lose performance on your GPU. So just bear that in mind. The OCulink port is better than Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt's better than USB. And having the GPU plugged directly into your computer is the best. Eventually, they'll get to a port, I'm sure, that it'll be the same, but we're not there yet. This shows it has an SD card reader in it. It supports quad screen display. So that means you're going to have you're going to have an HDMI port, a display port, and then 2 USB 4 ports that you can use for DisplayPort out for a total of 4 monitors at the same time. Now this has Intel Arc graphics, not the Iris graphics, Arc. All right, so bear that in mind too. This still may not be desirable when compared to AMD Radeon graphics that are baked in to the APU, or basically the built-in graphics on the CPU. Usually, lately, AMD's been leading in that for gaming, but not necessarily for any productivity work. So depending on what your needs and expectations are, I've also seen that the AMD equivalents to this are a lot more money, but everybody's got their favorite. I'm not here to tell you which one's better for you. I don't know most of you. That's a decision you need to make for yourself. So today, this is our subject matter, and this is what we will be looking at together. And with that, let me go back over to camera 1. Now, on the outside, it looks like any other mini PC box, except it's a little bit bigger. Set that over there so you don't forget what we're working on. We just have a serial number on the box, no other identifier. Like most other Minisforum packaging, we've got our little thing about slow USB times. Slow boot times might be because of updates, or anyway, it's just a little warning. They're trying to get ahead of unnecessary support calls due to misunderstanding of how Windows works. And then we've got a small owner's manual here, which, I'll just put there. And then we've got a little piece of foam here to keep it safe. This was in a piece of, like in a plastic bag. And this is a chunky boy. Look at this. So when it comes to these mini PCs, it's kind of funny how my perspective has changed. 3 years ago, I'd have said, look how tiny this is. Now I'm like, hey, it's a chunky boy. But that's not a bad thing. It's not like it's massive. It's just not that 4-inch by 4-inch standard. It's a little bigger than that. And as you can see on the top of it here, we've got a power button and a Copilot button. Now, why you need the Copilot button, I don't know. Ask me next year. Maybe I'll have an answer. But there it is. Microsoft's really pressuring companies to do this. You'll see the Copilot button on new keyboards that you buy, too. Good luck with that marketing strategy, Microsoft. I'm not using Copilot. Any of you use Copilot? On the front, we've got 2 USB 3s and a USB 4 and our audio jack right there for headphones, microphone, or headset. And on the far end, we've got a system reset if you were to need to clear the RAM for some reason. I've never had a customer in the real world ever use that ever in the history of computers. They would have used a reset button, but not grabbing a little paper clip or something. It's never happened in my world. It's never happened. But this is for people who like to play around and they get their machine locked up and they need to reset the BIOS. This is for them, which is not most of you. On the side, we've got what appears to be full-size SD card reader. That's always welcome because whether or not you're using micro SD or regular SD, you can always convert the micro SD or trans flash into SD adapters they're often free with an a micro SD card. But you can't go the other way around. So for those of us that still use these, this is always welcome to see a full size. On the other side, there's nothing. And if we go around the back, you can see all the ports just as pictured on the website from the OCulink, the USB 4 port here, the two 5 gig Ethernet ports here. There's our display port, our HDMI port. It looks like a USB 2, a USB 3, and a 19-volt barrel style connector, similar to what a laptop or other Intel NUCs were using when Intel was still making those. And then on the bottom here, we've got some rubber feet. We've got some keyholes here, which is nice because if you simply wanted to hang this somewhere, you could. However, looking at what's included in the rest of the box, what's this? Well, there we go. There's a Visa mount, apparently. It's in a cardboard box. Our power adapter right here says 120 watts right on it, and it says Minisforum. I appreciate that they've labeled the power adapter. Let me bring it up a little closer. You don't see this too often, and I really appreciate that they put the name on it because you don't want to get these mixed up with other electronics. Minisforum there, 120 watts there, and it uses a standard Mickey Mouse style cloverleaf power cable, which is also in the box. We'll get to that in a second. But I'm glad I don't have to get my silver Sharpie out and mark that. Spare rubber feet. There's our cloverleaf power cable, HDMI cable. And these are screws for the Visa mount. And that's it. That's all there is. Pretty much everything you need and nothing you don't. Ella Lindas contributes $17.77. Hello, Carey and Mara and chat. Staying cool in Arizona. Well, trying to. Yeah. David Graham says he uses Copilot. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else use Copilot? Okay, let's get that there and get that there. And let's get this plugged in and booted up. So, power, video, probably helps if I plug the HDMI cable into the HDMI port. Let's plug it into network. And I need a keyboard and a mouse and then power. So keyboard and mouse. Just here. Now normally I would plug this in the back USB 2.0 port. That's perfect for a keyboard or a mouse. Leave my USB 3s for something like a flash drive or external storage, something where I need the performance. It's not like my typing or mouse movement's going to be any faster on USB 3. It doesn't work that way. So I'll use my cloverleaf power cable here. And we'll just plug that in right there. And then we can turn the HDMI input on our capture card on. Like so. And then I will turn this on here. We do have a blue light that comes on. And then we will switch over to the HDMI port and see what video we get here. Oh, well, of course, our boot time is interrupted a little bit through the updates I did earlier. That's not normally something you're going to see. That's why I do this live and unscripted. We keep it real. And make sure your expectations are not in the clouds. All right, let's go to, well, first of all, I need to go full screen so I can see this the same way you guys at home do. So bear with me here for just 1 second as I change screen. There it is. And let's take a look at our system specifications. We'll right click on the start button and go to system. And we can see here, we've got the Intel Core Ultra 5 125H processor, which is running at 1.2 gigahertz because we're idle. Just like a car, it's idling. And when we push our foot down on the gas pedal, say I want to render a video or actually make the computer work, this number ramps up, as does the heat and the fans accordingly. There's our 32 gigs of RAM, Windows 11 Home, 23H2, everything is exactly the way it should be. If we close this out, we'll take a quick look in the device manager. We want to make sure that we don't have any devices without drivers. That would be really bad if the manufacturer sent it to us that way. But no, everything is loaded as it should be. And then if you're curious about the specifications of like an NPU, or even if you have an NPU, you would hit, say, Control-Alt-Delete, and then go to your task manager. Just as you would look at your CPU, right? When you go through these areas here, you'll notice down here is an NPU. And that can tell you, well, first of all, that you've got one and what it's doing, right? If it's being utilized. Again, we've got the Intel Arc GPU, our Ethernet adapter. In fact, let's take a look at what those Ethernet adapters are. Let me go back to the device manager, and let's take a quick look here under the network section to see who's making the network adapters. Looks like Realtek makes these 5 gigabit network adapters. They're both the same. And then our AX210 Wi-Fi Bluetooth is from Intel. Very good. What happens if you push the Copilot button? Let's see, we'll hit it, and Copilot opens no differently than if you click the Copilot button. That's normally down here. I usually disable that stuff because I find it annoying. But if you right click and go to taskbar settings here, you can turn the Copilot button on so it's always on your desktop, because again, you know, Microsoft marketing. So it's there. It's the same thing as pushing it on the computer. It's a pointless button to have it on the computer. But, you know, this is Microsoft's marketing. Okay, this is the amount of power Microsoft has to manipulate the culture. They can't control it, but they can certainly make an attempt to manipulate it, get people used to it, and then it becomes a thing. Now, I don't know how many things they put out that stick and how many things they put out that just go away. I imagine the stuff that sticks is probably on the lower side of how many things they try. I don't think this Windows Copilot's really appealing to anybody, or most people, until they give it some really needed purpose, which, so far as I can tell, does not yet exist other than as a toy. However, that's what it is, and you can certainly experiment with that with Windows 10 or 11. You should have the Copilot. If you don't, you can always just type on your search Copilot. Microsoft will be very happy to bring that right up. I don't know if you have to put a dash in it. No? Yeah, well, you can see right up on the right side, we've got the Wikipedia article talking about what it is and when it came out. And then, of course, we can always click on our apps in the start button. I'm surprised Microsoft hasn't just thrown it right up here. They're all apps. It's probably under It's either under Microsoft Copilot or it's just under Windows Copilot. Not under any of that. Interesting. I really expected it to just, before I could finish typing it, because of how heavy-handed their marketing is, custom visibility of the Copilot button is on the taskbar. So that's what they want you to do. They want you to put that right on your taskbar. That is on by default, and even if you turn it off, I'm sure with upcoming Windows updates, it's going to get turned right back on again, probably with 24H2 would be my guess. And I'm making a prediction. I could be wrong, but this is typical Microsoft marketing behavior. In over 30 years, you just kind of know what to expect. I don't feel anything anymore. Like, I don't like it, but I also don't hate it. It's like, oh, this is what you expect. You know, it's a dog, it barks. It's what dogs do. So this is what Microsoft has always done. And I don't have feelings about it one way or the other. It's just, this is what I've come to expect. Now, if they surprise me and I'm wrong, I'd be happy to be. But again, I want to set your expectations. And so just know you can turn it off if you don't like it. You can turn it on if you do. It's your decision, nobody else's. Now, let me go ahead and put my flash drive in it, and I'll run, let's see, we'll put VLC on it, and let me get my glasses so I can see the back of the unit here. Oh, it's under the HDMI port, my USB 3 back here. That's why I couldn't see it. I really have this backwards. The keyboard and mouse should be in the back, and the flash drive should be in the front. But that's okay. It gets the job done regardless. Like I say, when we do the videos live, this is exactly why we shoot them live. So you can see these second thoughts and regrets with regards to my decisions on what I plugged in. But let me just go through the VLC installer right quick, and then I'll also grab Uncle Carey's Windows 10 Optimizer. And then we can put on, under the PC testing software, we'll grab Cinebench, of course. And we'll grab Crystal Disk Mark and the hardware info utility. That ought to be enough. And I've got everything loading off that flash drive. It's a very fast flash drive, so we don't have to copy everything over and run it locally. If you don't want to spend much money on a flash drive, you're going to get a much slower flash drive. These were expensive flash drives because they're faster. So this is an industry, almost universally, where you get what you pay for. You want to save a few bucks and buy an $8 flash drive, what you're going to bring home is an $8 flash drive. You want to buy the same capacity flash drive for $60, assuming it's a name brand with good ratings, you're more than likely getting a flash drive that's 5 times faster than the one you bought at the least. And if that doesn't matter to you, time versus money, you make your choice. Just know what to expect. Now, let's go ahead and run the optimizer right quick, which will require a reboot. And then we can start measuring the performance of the included SSD, as well as try the thermals out on this with Cinebench, and then finally we can open the bottom of it and see what it looks like in there. In the meantime, if you have questions that I can help you with, problems you might be having with your computer, any troubles, let us know what the trouble is and we can see what we can do to help. We always offer that during live videos. We don't do that for free offline for people. There's no way for me to do that. I can't afford to spend money to help complete strangers. However, when we're live and we have the entire community available, we certainly enjoy the process of helping people diagnose issues and resolve them with their computer while we're live. Let's take a quick look at what I'm missing in the chat room here and see if there's any questions I've missed. David Graham contributed $2, says push the Copilot button. Well, I guess I missed that one a while back. Thank you, David. William Denton contributed $9.99 in chat. Thank you, William. John Paul Bacon says, sorry, I haven't been on for a while. Has Miniforums made changes so that there's no malware? Miniforums never had malware. I think you're confused. I think you're thinking of Ace Magic. Is Ford still making the Tesla? Ford never made the Tesla. That was, I think you just conflated two different manufacturers. Now, let's go back to our desktop here and let's take a look at Crystal Disk Mark info and see what sort of performance we're getting out of the 1 terabyte drive that comes with this model. And we'll just run all tests. So while the tests are running, again, I'm going to look in the chat to see what other questions you guys have. And I'll put camera 1 up in the corner. So bear with me here for just 1 second and I will get this window moved up here so I'm not blocking the results. Now, a Gen 4 high performance SSD will run up to about 7,300 megabytes per second. This one looks like we're at 4,800. So anything over 3,500 is Gen 4 speeds. Remember that when we add more speed, we add more heat. Just bear that in mind. It's not like, oh, it's all better to get the faster one. There's a downside to the faster one. Potentially, faster one could start running slower. If it's getting too hot, then its performance will take a big hit. So would you be better off having little spikes of performance where it goes fast and it slows way down here? Or would you be better off sort of up towards the top, not quite at the top, where you could sustain that on a regular basis? Which one of those is faster depends on what your expectations are, how intolerant or tolerant you are, along with how much money you want to spend. So I think that's the reasoning behind the decision. But again, that doesn't mean just because you put a fast NVMe drive in there that you're the kind of user that would cause it to overheat to begin with. On the other hand, it seems pretty likely those two people are the same people. The people that say they need a faster drive are probably the people who use it heavily and are more likely going to experience a heat-related problem than if they would have left it alone. So, you know, it's an observation. It could be completely wrong about you as an individual because I don't know you. I'm generalizing. Paul O'Brien renews his membership, now a member for 13 months. Thank you, Paul. He says, I'm at last. No, I'm not paying a late fee. Just be glad I'm around to support my day. Thank you, Paul. Nick says, I'm running 2 DisplayPort monitors off 1 DisplayPort via a splitter, and frequently 1 display switches off and on again. Yeah, you shouldn't be using a DisplayPort splitter. The problem is there's only a certain, think about it this way. Let's say I have a garden hose and the water's coming out of it, and I put a splitter on the garden hose because I want to attach 2 things to my garden hose, 2 sprinklers. Well, now the water pressure will be split in half, and neither sprinkler will shoot the water up as high. You're doing the same thing with your DisplayPort power. So what's going through the DisplayPort cable is power, and that carries the signal depending on the length of the DisplayPort and the version of DisplayPort. There's enough power there to power 1 monitor. What you've done is you've bought a device which should be illegal to sell, in my opinion, and you're utilizing it in a way that the seller, so understand, sellers want to separate you from your money. That's generally the rule. Whatever it takes, even if the products they make are kludgy, against engineering specifications, and are not supported by manufacturers, they don't care. They just want your money. Once they have your money, your problems are your problems. They want nothing to do with you. So DisplayPort splitters should never be used. If you want to display 2 monitors on your computer, then you should use either a proper amplified splitter, right? That's something that's going to plug in and it gives power so that both signals can go out without one monitor. Depending on the make and model of the monitor, some monitors are more sensitive than others when it comes to like needing a certain amount of voltage. And then you could add another graphics card. You can do that through a USB port. You can add a display through USB. If you have USB 4, you can go straight out of USB 4. But anytime you're trying to save $1, you are opening up yourself to a world of troubleshooting that will never end. So it becomes a matter of, do you want to spend a few dollars and do it right? Or do you want to save every nickel and dime possible to get the bare minimum and then just struggle with it until you're so fed up, you ultimately end up buying the right thing to begin with, which at the end, looking back on it, you spent more money and more time than if you would have just spent the money up front. You spent more later and you spent more time figuring it out because you were trying to save money. It ultimately cost you more money. The proper fix for this is to not use a DisplayPort splitter. That, in my opinion, was a complete waste of your money. And any amount of time you spend trying to fix it, it can't be fixed, in my opinion. It's the wrong item. It's not, well, it was marketed and sold as something for you to split your monitors. As you can see from firsthand experience, there's a reason why we don't do that. So, I mean, I appreciate the question. Some lessons are harder to learn than others, but that is not a proper way to do it. And by proper, I mean doing it right, getting it done right the first time. And whatever you paid for that splitter, I just hope it wasn't much, because that, as far as I'm concerned, belongs in a trash can. Shame on the seller. What are you going to do? People are happy to sell you anything you want to buy. If you want to buy a drug that kills you, you can find sellers who'll sell it to you. All you got to do is see the news and see this epidemic of things like fentanyl and stuff that are killing people. And they spend their hard-earned money to kill themselves. And it's crazy to me. But this is the world we live in, where if you want to buy it, they'll sell it to you. They'll sell you things that'll supposedly increase the mileage on your car that actually cause harm to the car. And you will pay money to damage your perfectly good working car. And they're happy to take your money, and they will not support you, generally speaking. They're gone. They move on to the next customer. It's always been sort of the snake oil mentality that we can't seem to evolve past. People taking advantage of complete strangers without any provocation you just have to defend yourself. Do a little research before making these purchases can save you a lot of headache later. Pay a little bit more rather than a lot later. That would be my suggestion. Okay, so the SSD runs at, it looks like 4,800 on the read, sequential read, a little under 4,000 on the sequential writes. This is a middling Gen 4. You know, it's not high end and it's not a cheap, like we've seen some of these Kingston drives that are just terrible. I don't know who makes this. Could be Kingston for all I know. Let's take a look and see if we can see if we can see who makes this drive. One quick way to check would be to go to the My Computer icon, or we can just click the yellow folder if you don't have this PC icon. Right click on the C drive, go to Properties, and then go to Hardware. And oftentimes the manufacturer is Kingston right there. I was going to say, oftentimes the manufacturer name is right there in the hardware ID. And the problem with Kingston that I have is I never quite know which of their stuff is good and which of their stuff is crap, because Kingston doesn't have a value brand. So Kingston sells the cheap crap and the good stuff under the same name of Kingston. I can't tell them apart anymore. So I avoid Kingston for that reason. This Kingston drive is fine. It's nothing to write home about, but it's not bad. Now, if we take Cinebench and we start that, we go over here to our hardware info. We can start hardware info first, so we get an idea of what our temps have been so far, right? We're going to do sensors only, start that up. And again, I'm happy to address any questions you have here. Once we get Cinebench started, it's going to run the first test for 10 minutes and the second test for 10 minutes. So I'm going to set this over here. Actually, I probably need to go over here so I can keep the camera on. And start temps at This is one I want to take a look at, our current temps here. And we want to watch our maximum temps. That's this entire row. And it looks like our max has been 41 so far under just a normal human workload that most people would be using it for. Cinebench is an unrealistic synthetic benchmark which does not in any way, shape, or form reflect actual use, but it is an extreme test designed to maximize the resources of the computer in an attempt to see what would happen if. All right, so this is all purely theoretical and is not based at all on reality, other than in the unlikely scenario that you are someone who abuses the heck out of your computer. You don't want a mini PC in general. You want something bigger. You want something far more expensive if you're that demanding. Now, let me minimize this for a moment so I can get Cinebench started. And let's get that. All I'm saying is if you want to be a race car driver, don't go to the Chevy dealer asking what the cheapest car on the lot is. You got to pick one or the other. Be realistic. All right, let's go ahead and start this first test off, and we'll bring up the hardware monitor so we can watch it. Suppose I can just move that in between so we can keep an eye on both. All right, so while that runs, we'll keep an eye on the temps here. The fan so far, I barely hear it, so that's a good sign. Now, while that runs, let me go back. Suppose I could put myself down. I think maybe camera 1 will look good down at the bottom. We'll keep the clock visible just to prove we're live. And let's see what else is going on in the chat, or if you have any questions about this or other Minisforum PCs or other mini PCs that we've looked at. Nick says the splitter is an amplified splitter. So what's the make and model of splitter you have? That would be my first question. Remember that DisplayPort is an intelligent bi-communication. So if it's got two monitors telling its maximum resolution and refresh rate, how does it know which one to listen to? Or does it just send one signal out blindly regardless? And are you, as the user, responsible for setting it so both monitors? Also, are the make and model of the monitors the same, or are they two completely different manufacturers? Because if you want to share a signal, you should be using the same make and model of monitor. You're going to be paying some money one way or the other. That's all I'm trying to tell you. If you want to run two different monitors, you definitely want them on their own display port or their own input source. If you want to split them or split the signal, you definitely want to split the signal to the exact same make and model to increase the likelihood of success. So I'm going to guess, based on what you're describing, that those two monitors are not the same. And then you tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong. Ben Laird wants to know, does the same apply to USB hubs, or should you connect directly to the motherboard? It depends what you're plugging in. If you have a high power drain device, like an external mechanical hard drive, it's going to drain all the power from the USB hub. In that case, you need a powered USB hub if you want to plug multiple devices in. And you'll know when it's happening because something won't work. And if some USB device isn't working, it's likely because you've drained all the power available one of the devices you're plugging in, and you can find out by unplugging them one at a time. Most USB devices are very low power, such as a keyboard, a mouse, a flash drive. But other USB devices like video capture cards, maybe some USB network cards, as well as, of course, external mechanical drives that are running off USB power, they take all the power, leaving nothing for anything else. So if you need to have multiple higher power running absorbing USB devices, then you, nobody else but you we're talking about, would need a powered USB hub. But if you're trying to solve a problem you're not having, then there's nothing I can do to help you. If you actually have an issue with your USB ports, I'd like to know what the issue is, and then I can help advise you to how to solve it. Because you're asking a question that assumes a solution, and I don't know if it's to a problem you have or to a problem you imagine. So it may not be the right solution for you, depending, first of all, if you even have a problem. And second of all, what is the problem? And then third, let me help you resolve that rather than you making an assumption. Your assumption might be correct, but I just don't know without more information, and I'd like to be more helpful to you. You're asking me, is this west? And I go, yeah, that's west. But you haven't told me where you're trying to go. Well, I'm trying to go to the Costco. Well, the one to the west is 6 miles away. The one to the north is 2 blocks away. See, if I were you, I would go north. You understand how when you provide me information of what your goal is, I can provide better direction. But if you're simply asking me for direction without telling me why, I can answer your question, but it might just continue you down the wrong path you never intended to go on because you assumed that was the right way to go. Makes it difficult to offer you valuable information in that regard. William Denton says he has a Minisforum Atomman X7 Ti on order that should be delivered in a couple weeks. That seems like a little beast of a machine and a bit larger. I'll be very interested. We'll see if Minisforum sends us one because I'd be very interested to review it and to hear your thoughts on it. Nick says he couldn't get a motherboard with 2x DisplayPort. No, you shouldn't need 2x DisplayPort. You should be able to use a simple HDMI to DisplayPort, a little cable for $10 on Amazon, and convert the HDMI to a DisplayPort signal with that little adapter cable. It's cheaper than a splitter. It's more reliable. You can control the resolution separately. And more than likely, if you have a DisplayPort on your motherboard, you also have an HDMI that you're not using. Nick says he's got identical Dell monitors and he's using a StarTech. Okay, thank you for the information, Nick. Does the motherboard have an HDMI port on it? Nick says, yeah. Yeah, so I would just go to Amazon and type HDMI to DisplayPort. I use the DisplayPort to HDMI cables all the time here on the channel. You must have seen me use these. Here's one that's just that, because sometimes we get these Dell machines that are DisplayPort only, the business machines. So I get this little cable right here, and this end plugs in the DisplayPort on the back of the computer. And this end, you just use the regular HDMI cable. But you can get it the other way around. And there's no power needed. It's a cleaner setup. It's less expensive. It gives you more control over each monitor individually. And it keeps your cabling nice and clean. It keeps less clutter on the desk. This, if you would have asked me, this is the cheaper, easier solution with more control and compatibility that I would have offered you. So I think you'll find that the HDMI to DisplayPort adapter is what you will be happy with. And if you do decide to buy one, let me know how that works out for you. I think it'll be far superior in every way to a splitter. Reliability, control, and price. Not to mention the cable management and everything else that goes. So I hope that helps. Lorshek mentions a lot of times the DisplayPort cables can be at fault. That's a good point. If you want to, just for the sake of argument, change the cables and see if the monitor that's flaking out becomes the other monitor that's stable. If the stable monitor starts flaking out and all you did was change the cables, then you've got a bad DisplayPort cable. Appreciate that feedback. That is absolutely possible. Nick Caffrey says, I guess he should use HDMI for one monitor. They have inputs on the back of the monitor for either DisplayPort or HDMI. I mean, that would be what I would call common sense. Like, why would you get an adapter at all if you don't need it? Like, to me, as a tech, I buy adapters when I don't have a choice. But if the choice is to run DisplayPort on one monitor and HDMI on the other, and the motherboard offers one DisplayPort and one HDMI, there's no problem to solve here. You know, it's sort of like stubbornly thinking, I want to use this cable, and then creating a whole world of issues for the cost of an HDMI cable, which, once again, even simplifies things more. An HDMI cable is very cheap, less cable clutter, no adapters to buy. It's straight, plugs in like it should, better control over the monitor. Yeah, that to me should be obvious. When we don't have the plugs we need, then the adapters are required. But if we have the plugs we need, we should use them. And then we don't need adapters, and we don't have to deal with these consequences that may not happen right away. These are indirect consequences where people don't realize immediately the problem or the issue of their decision making. It's something that happens over time. And because I run a business, it's important to me that I get it right the first time, that I'm not having to keep going back, inconveniencing the customer needing the service call, inconveniencing me by not being able to charge for a warranty call because I gave bad advice, and the customer might think I don't really know what I'm doing. So to avoid all that, I don't entertain these ideas unless they're absolutely, positively the last resort. Always choose the simple thing first. You know, the proven thing, get it done, get in and out faster, and have a less likely support-related call as a result. And cost-wise, it'd be cheaper, not to mention the inconvenience. But there you go. Matt Zoloff says, hello, Carey and Mara and everyone out there today. I have enjoyed you by listening. I appreciate that. Matt Zoloff, he says, always is interesting. See you later. Well, thank you. Matt Zoloff joins us from Sweden. Lorshek said the only DisplayPort splitter they found reliable was $70 from a company called Cable Matters. Nick Caffrey says, yeah, that was faulty logic on my part. It struck me I should privilege identical output ports. No common sense available at the time. It happens to us all, man. If you watch this channel long enough, you know I've had a couple of bouts of that, and I'm sure it won't be the end of it. It's all good. That's why it's good sometimes just to talk about it, right? Because sometimes something's right in front of us and we're not seeing it. Happens to me all the time. If there's a backwards way to do it, that's the first way I instinctively want to do it. I want to do it backwards. I think it's just my reverse engineering mindset. Someone goes, you know, you could have done that a lot faster if you did it the other way around. Well, I know that now. The good news is, as long as we learn from that, it's worth it. If we keep repeating the same mistake over and over again, that's a different problem I can't help you with. It's all good. Let's see how we're doing over here. Let me check my progress. Again, I'm really not hearing the fan on this at all. Looks like we've seen a max temp of 81 Celsius. That's really, really good. Again, we got 14 cores, 18 threads. Oh, and the test finished. All right, that was the multi-core. Let's go ahead and start the single core. This time flew when I was having fun, huh? Let's go ahead and give that a start. And then we'll check back in over here. In the meantime, let me look back over at the chat room. See if there's other questions. Again, if you're having any computer troubles that you're struggling with, we can help you with those. Doman 2000 says a splitter you use only to duplicate screens, not for dual separate screens. Well, once again, I think this is common sense, but yes, I mean, does that need to be said? If it splits a signal, it's splitting the same signal at the same resolution of the same screen. At the same time, if you hooked up each monitor separately, you could put it in duplication mode in Windows, but it takes under consideration the refresh rate and the resolution of one monitor versus the other, versus just cloning one to the other regardless. That's why I'm not a fan of splitters. There's not a whole lot of control there. Mark Gaines joins us from Northern Ireland, contributes 10 pounds. This is hello, Carey, Mara, and everyone in the chat. Cheers, Mark. Thank you, my friend. David Graham says, wow, my motherboards only have a single HDMI. Most motherboards only have a single HDMI. And then you might have a display port or a DVI. In other words, most motherboards will have more than one video out, but usually they don't duplicate. So you're not going to have two HDMIs or two display ports or two VGAs or two DVIs. You can, it's just not very common. What's most common on the back of a modern motherboard is one of each, one HDMI, one display port. That's pretty much it. Now, if you buy one of the pre-builds like from Dell or HP, those will often, especially if they're business class, have two display ports and no HDMI. But I mean, if that's a problem you're just noticing now, you don't have a problem. If this was something that you never even entertained, it's because it doesn't apply to you. And so to go and look to see if it's an option for you is unnecessary, because it's obviously an option you don't require and you've never considered before. So therefore, you're not hurting, you're not suffering, and you're not missing anything because you're not solving any problems. You don't have any. So don't let knowledge be a negative. Like they say, ignorance is bliss. If you're suggesting you were happy with your motherboard until you just now discovered you only have one HDMI port, I apologize for giving you that knowledge. I thought it would help you. It wasn't intended to cause you to feel as though you were missing something. Don't let it interfere with your emotional state. Let it actually impact your ability to use your computer. And if you do have an impacted ability to use your computer, tell us what you're trying to do, because there's lots of different ways to solve problems, including if you needed another HDMI port. It doesn't matter if the motherboard has it or not. It's just a convenience. But it can always be added a number of different ways, relatively simply. And if it's needed, you can solve that. If it's just something you want to play with because you have it, you know, that's a different problem altogether. Just so we're clear. Let's take a look. What else we got? Peter VZ with a €1 contribution. Thank you, Peter. Joining us there from Amsterdam. Paul O'Brien with €2 in super chat. Cheers, Paul. A drink is getting warm, and when it gets warm, it's nasty. I'm going to put that back in the fridge and go grab a cold Gatorade. And as we wait for this test to complete, we're just chatting. We're just chatting, seeing what's up, what's on your mind. And if you have an actual, real technical problem that we can help you with, we'd be delighted to help. We being myself and the chat room both. Anxieties and imagination, can't really help too much with that. Shop Persian Rugs renews their membership. Right on. Thank you for that. Says, good evening, everyone. They're now a member for 7 months. Right on. Is Cinebench running much faster today? What's going on? Is it? Hold on, let me check. Did it complete? As soon as I figure out how to switch my screen. I'm clicking the wrong things. Here we go. Full screen over here, so I can see that the way you guys see it. No, it's okay. So Cinebench is still running. Yeah, it's going to run 10 minutes. Okay, so Our maximum temp still only 81 on this. I mean, you can try this on your computer at home. It's a free download. Both of these, HW Info 64. You can read the top of the window if you ever want to know what software I'm using. And then you can just Google that to find the actual source. Don't download it from a questionable source. And I always download the portable versions. I'm not installing anything. I don't want this stuff in the registry or the system files. These are portable applications that can be run directly without install. And you can download them for free, completely legally, and replicate the test I'm running to see how the computer you're using compares, just so you know. It looks like Dave E has removed somebody's comment. Why would you do that? He says, how did I accidentally delete a comment? I don't know, but I'd appreciate if you were more careful about that. I apologize to the person whose comment got deleted. It's upsetting to me when that happens. Please be more careful. If, regardless if it's on purpose or not, the problem with moderator status is if someone is not aware that they're using it and it's causing damage, to protect everybody, I need to remove you from moderator status. I understand something can happen once. That's not a problem. But if it continues to happen, and this applies to everybody, by the way, for your safety and the safety of others, I will remove the moderator status so those mistakes will stop. But it's all good. It's all good. We're all allowed to make mistakes. We just don't want that to be a normal thing here, okay? And if it's happening and you don't understand how it's happening, the best way for me to solve it is to take the option away. But I don't want to. It's not my goal. Okay, we're all good. I appreciate it, Dave. I appreciate that. You didn't do that on purpose. It's all good. We all make mistakes. We just don't want to keep making the same mistakes. That's all. All right. Let's see. Doman 2000 says, if you're on a phone, it can happen easily. Well, if that's the case, let me know, and I will temporarily remove your moderator status, and then let me know when you feel like you can control it, and I'll give it back to you. Again, the moderator status doesn't really do anything for you other than turn you blue, but it does give you the ability to cause damage. And I want to make sure that proper care is taken when people are given that. And if for any reason there is some issue of understanding it or controlling it, just let me know. It's nothing against you. We'll just take it away so until you can get control back, we'll give it back. That's all. We just don't want to start handing people matches and they're lighting them and having no idea how these matches are lighting and then setting buildings on fire because they have, I don't know how that happened. Well, just give me the matches back, and when you're ready, you know what I'm saying? What would you do if you were me, Some innocent person just had their comment deleted who didn't deserve it. And I didn't do it. So we just want to prevent that as much as possible. Again, I understand mistakes. It's fine. All right, let's see. Well, anyway, let's move on, shall we? Dave Price joins us, says hello. Welcome in, Dave. What's this doing? Looks like still 81 is our maximum. And the clock is at 0, which means the benchmark must be running right now. So this test is nearly over. Okay, so once this test is over and everything's looking good, my plan will be we'll go back to the main camera here. We'll go full screen and we'll attempt to take this apart. I think it should be pretty straightforward. It looks like the rubber feet have to come off. That certainly would explain why they've given us extras. I appreciate having extra little rubber feet if they're required to remove in order to open the machine. They never quite stick back good. And then over time, if you've done that a few times, they just won't stick at all. And that leads to people solving the problem using Gorilla Glue or Super Glue, which then the rubber foot's going to tear. It's going to permanently stay stuck. And the next time you need to remove it, people create problems and they make them worse. So if they just by giving us extra rubber feet, that at least puts that off. Ideally, they just put a hole in the center of the rubber foot so we could access the screws without having to take the rubber feet off. But they just aren't getting the message. So we'll keep saying it over and over and over again, as long as it takes. Please don't make us remove rubber feet to open the machine to do something as simple as a RAM, SSD, or a wireless card upgrade. That shouldn't be that complicated. In fact, I imagine once the rubber feet are out of the way, it's very simple. It's the rubber feet that make it more difficult than it needs to be. So that's my opinion on it, if I haven't been clear about it before. All right, let me jump over here real quick, and this should be about done. Got to be close. Full screen. There it is. And no, not quite done yet. Oh, I see it's still drawing. Okay, almost there. So this whole time, I can barely hear the fan. I do hear a fan, but it's barely noticeable. And at a maximum temp of 81, actually I see port 8 got to 92. That's still well below 100. Which is good, right? I mean, you want it to be able to get to a point of performance that we don't want to throttle, because let's say I didn't want this thing going over 85. Then whatever added performance we got getting it to 92, we would be giving up in exchange for keeping that max at 85. So I want to get the most out of the CPU, but I don't want it sustaining a high temperature for a long period of time. I don't want it running at 92 all the time. It can run at 97 for all I care, as long as it's just there for a few seconds and comes back down. That's what it's designed to do. But if it gets up there at 97 and it's doing it frequently, like, or it's staying there, you're probably going to end up with a CPU that's got a very short lifespan. probably. Okay, there's our final score results at 1704 there on the single core test. And what is that, 14,259? It's hard to see from this distance, but you can see it better than I can. And there's your Cinebench results, and there's our maximum temps. And if we scroll down, we can take a look at things like frequencies and voltages and whatnot. And I just scrolled this down because if you're interested in it, you can always freeze the frame later and come back and look at this information if it's of interest to you. Go all the way to the top too. Okay, so with that, we'll close and close. And we'll shut this down. And then I'm going to go full screen on camera 1. Like so. Power light just went out, so machine's off. I don't know if my mic suppression's picking that up. The top is ribbed. All right, so to take this take it apart and open it, we'll go ahead and unplug everything, especially power. And flip this over. My overhead camera hasn't been on in a couple days, but let's hope the battery will last us long enough. These Sony cameras, I don't know what's up with these Sony cameras, but their batteries drain even when they're off excessively. So if I don't have it charged up like a couple hours before showtime, my battery life is exceptionally limited compared to, at a full charge. Now my Canon cameras, they hold a full charge for months. The Sony cameras only hold a full charge for just a couple days, even though they're off. And it just seems to be inherent in all of their point and shoot and digital cameras, and unique to only Sony. Nobody else does that. But the darn picture quality is so good, I'm willing to tolerate putting up with it because they do a really good job on the color definitions and brightness, which we're going to see here in just a moment. Let me go to my close-up camera. There it is. Zoom in a bit. And let's straighten this out. Which way do I go? Bear with me here for a second as I figure this out. This way. Maybe something like that'll work. Now I see the problem. I got to bring the camera way over here. All right. So those little rubber feet have to come off. And my glasses need to come on so as I can seize. Oh yeah, it's just sticky tape. And there's a Phillips screw right there. And so what I don't like about these rubber feet, you see how it's leaving some residue? Sure would be great if the rubber feet had holes in them and we could leave the rubber feet on. Or if the rubber feet were just offset. That wouldn't bother me. You will notice there's an arrow indicator right here. This indicates the front. And this is so that when you put the bottom back on, that you're not putting it on in the wrong orientation. Now, bear in mind, a lot of these mini PCs will have a lot of these mini PCs will have things attached to the bottom plate, like Wi-Fi antennas, maybe a power cable to a fan. And if you look closely, it says, right, where is it? Arrow indicating front. And there's a little gouge, not a gouge, but a little slot to put like a flat blade driver in to pop the lid up once you've removed the screws. How many mini PCs have we looked at where there's nothing at the seam? And even here, you could stick a small screwdriver in one of these keyholes and pull it up that way. So this is a little redundant with this design. But regardless, let me go ahead and grab my screwdriver here and let's open this up and see what it looks like in there. That is a big screw. I'm using a Japanese industrial standard, JIS #1. A Phillips #1 may work, but I find these Japanese #1, the JIS #1s, just grip better. You can make a regular Phillips #1 work, but this is the intended tool, I believe, for most of this stuff. Now, as far as lifting this up, you might need to grab a tool. Be careful. Remember, if you pull this up with force, you might rip the wires off the bottom that are connected to the board, if there are any. And usually these days, there's something attached, at the very least Wi-Fi antennas. And we've got little clips that are holding it on. So people have a tendency to want to pull against those clips, and then it breaks free and they pull it completely away and end up yanking the wires right off. So exercise care when you do this to avoid any unintended damage. Oh, okay. So this has neither Wi-Fi antennas, nor does it have a fan attached. But what it does have attached are the 2 USB ports. That's a different design I've never seen before. So that would go that way. And that feeds those 2 port holes there. And that means that the ribbon cable attached, you want to try and keep that as straight as possible. We don't want to put that to the left or right and risk tearing that. So as we can see, we do not have any access to the RAM or the SSD without first removing this piece right here. Now, my concern is I don't want to separate the heatsink from the CPU. Depending on what kind of thermal compound, if they use liquid metal, you don't want to open that up. I'm going to guess they didn't on this one. You can see the fan, that the cable that powers the fan is right there. I can see a heatsink for what I believe is the NVMe drive right here. And likely our RAM is over here, because there's no room for it to be against the ports, and there's no room here. So the RAM must be under here. Our NVMe is under here. So how does that come out? That's a bit more complex than I'd like, and it certainly explains why the rubber feet are covering up the screws, because this is not as user serviceable. Seems like, you know, I talked earlier about the Ace Magic Starship not being user serviceable. In my opinion, this moves us backwards. Simple access to the RAM and SSD would be a frequent and common upgrade that someone would want to do in time. And so to make that difficult, well, you know what? I think the RAM is here. Now that I'm looking at it, maybe that right there, that silver lining looks like heat shield for RAM. And again, our NVMe drive would be here, and then underneath of that would be our M.2 Wi-Fi card. So now the question is, how would you service that? These are not screws. These are what something screws into. This is the back end. So there'd be a screw on the other side. I don't see anything obvious on how that comes off. I see the typical 4 screws, in, 1 screw in each corner that holds the board down, but that would remove the whole board. What if you just wanted to take this top piece off? What is securing that top piece? I see a series of screws, 2 little screws here, here, 2 more here, 2 more here, 2 more here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And they're super tiny. This would be gigantic to try and get those out. If those are even screws. It appears they are, but I don't want to have to remove 12 screws to get this plate out just to do something like upgrade RAM. In fact, this big fan is in the way. This fan has to come out regardless to get to the RAM. I was really, really liking this computer until I got to the rubber feet and until I got to this enclosure that is not obvious with regards to how you would access that for something as simple as an NVMe or RAM upgrade. So what it looks like, if I had to guess, is you would have to take out all 12 screws to lift this piece out. And then I think you'll see the screws to the fan here. And then that would have to come out. That's going to break your seal, your factory seal off your thermal compound in order to get to the RAM. If you're not wanting to upgrade the RAM, then I think you only need to take this piece off to get to the NVMe drive here. But I'm not sure. I'm just guessing. I mean, I know that's the NVMe drive. And there doesn't seem to be room to add a second one. So if I were to order this bare bones, I would be curious. You know what? I'm curious right now. Wow, that is super tiny. Not only is this more time consuming, but you've got to have the right tools. Most people are not going to have these small tools. Most people don't do this work regularly enough to justify buying these tools. And if they did, they wouldn't be able to find where they put them. And it's probably been months since they last used them. Ask me how I know. Let's try something here. Will this come up with the heatsink all in one piece? I'm thinking the NVMe heatsink here. Feel like I'm on the goo. Yeah. Okay, so good news. Good news. Only these 6 screws had to come out, and they screw down here onto this heatsink, which I'm guessing our CPU is under where all these copper pipes are. Our RAM is right here, and yes, this is the little foil heat spreaders, which are sticky. I don't know why they're sticky. And then that's how you would access your RAM. That's not terrible, but you know, I don't see any maker model on this RAM at all. Okay, that's not terrible, but it is a little bit more complex than we would expect. That back before I forget where it goes. There's our NVMe drive right there. And underneath of that should be our Wi-Fi card. Now this is interesting. I see an NVMe port right here. What is this for? Let's see what's going on under here. Interesting. We just have the one standoff there. There's our Kingston flash drive that we looked at earlier. Where's our Wi-Fi card? Or our Wi-Fi antennas. I don't see Wi-Fi antennas on this at all. But we know we've got an AX210 in there from Intel. The question is it soldered down? Ooh. No, that's our 3.5 millimeter audio jack right there. That is so weird. Wonder what that's for. It's not like you're going to be able to stack them. Unless they're at different heights. And the same screw can hold down. Again, I don't know what this is. It's an M.2 slot, but for what? I don't know. It's a very interesting design for cooling in that they're just using the one fan, apparently. And I can appreciate that that fan, well, you know, now that I think about it, this style of fan isn't going to cool anything underneath of it, I don't think. I think it's pushing all the air out right through here. Going to suck all the air in from the top, push it out through here, and it's going to blow through this heatsink right here in and out the back where you could feel the heat coming out. I don't know that that's really helping keep the RAM or the NVMe cool, but this heatsink certainly for the NVMe drive seems more than adequate. And then the covers on the RAM, maybe with that proximity to the fan, natural air movement occurs that would not otherwise without any air movement in here. So it may, even though it's not directly cooling the RAM, it may be indirectly cooling it. That's a new one for me. We'll chalk that up as a new experience for Carey. I've never seen a design like that. Oh, and my rubber foot just stuck back. That guy just wants to stick to anything. Just set this right back down, and you have to align. So the thermal tape on the bottom of the NVMe heatsink wants to stick. And these screws will help keep us properly aligned in that way as well. And I would probably do opposite corners just to make sure we're aligned here. Well, that's interesting. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like that. I don't believe it should be this difficult to access it. And if it's an issue regarding cooling, I would find another way. But it is a high-performing machine. I mean, it's an Ultra 5, which is Intel's latest generation of CPU. They've gotten rid of the Core. It's no longer Intel Core. It's now Intel Ultra. And that tells you you're getting an NPU, or a neural processing unit, on the Intel Ultra line. I think we're done with the Core branding, and you won't see any more except on older older models. Don't over tighten. It is a heat sink, so do make sure that's tight. I don't know where the Wi-Fi card is. I don't know if that's soldered on. And then we've got to get the USB ports through these holes. Make sure they're lined up before you try and force this plate down. And make sure that your arrow indicating the front is facing the front. And as long as you follow those two rules, it should just snap in. Remember, this does have these little plastic snaps. So they feel a little resistance, and that's normal. Make sure your ports are lined up before you put your screws back in. Get a lot more leverage with the bigger driver, Carey. And those do drive in quite a bit. That's also a bit surprising just how much these will turn. Now, if you've taken this apart for any reason, I would absolutely power it back on before sticking the rubber feet back on, because you're going to have a limited number of times that you can take these feet off and on before they simply won't stick anymore. We're just about at our 2-hour limit for today's show, which takes us perfectly to wrapping things up here with an overview and summary. Overall, I would not consider this a computer that I would buy as a bare bones unit myself. And as a regular everyday common user, I would not try to save a few dollars and grab more performance doing it myself, unless I fully understood what I was signing myself up for. It seems like a lot of trouble and a lot of time, where if you just bought it spec'd out already, you don't have to worry about drivers, you don't have to worry about providing an operating system, and you don't have to worry about damaging something accidentally in disassembly, which would be your fault and not a warranty issue. I'm not saying Minisforum would or would not cover it, but they would not be legally obligated to cover damage you caused. So I don't know how that process would happen, but I do know that if you bought the machine already configured and it didn't work for any reason, they would absolutely take care of it, no problem, no question. I mean, there'd be no fighting over who did what. So the minute we go bare bones, though, there's some accountability and responsibility the end user has to understand. You got to know what you're doing on some of these, and it may not be the best way to learn unless you're willing to pay the price for that education, which could be buying another one. And that wouldn't be Minisforum's fault necessarily. I mean, that's why we make these videos. I want you to understand what to expect. And if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. But if you're not okay with it, steer clear of it. So we're going to just power this back on and make sure I haven't damaged anything. I'm sure I haven't, but that doesn't mean, just because I feel that way doesn't mean that's actually the way it is. Assume nothing. We'll turn that back on and just verify it boots back into Windows and we haven't caused any problems. And if we have, I'll be very surprised. Let's go back to HDMI input here. It's still quiet. It's running like it was before. I mean, we didn't really do much, but nonetheless, I should also check and make sure I still have 32 gigs of RAM. If you don't seat that RAM in correctly, if it's, a little carelessly installed, which I will do sometimes, especially when my focus is on the camera and not on the job. Let's just make sure we have 32 gigs and not 16. Yeah, yeah, everything's put back the way it was. It's all good. All right, guys, I think that is going to wrap up today's video. And a thank you again to the folks at Minisforum for giving us this early peek. And overall, you know, it's a bit larger than most minis that we see. It's also a lot more capable and quieter. On the other hand, it's not as user upgradable. I like that the Minisforum name is on the power adapter. That's a good thing. I don't like the rubber feet. I don't like those screws being this long. That's a little ridiculous. And there should be an easier way to access the SSD, the RAM, and I'd be very curious, where's the Wi-Fi card? What's that other M.2 slot for? It looks like it's for a Wi-Fi card, but with just the one standoff, how would you attach two things to one standoff? I don't understand what the design is there, unless one is just a couple millimeters lower and they can be stacked, but then will the screw be long enough to go through both? I've never seen a design like that that worked. I don't know what that's for or why that's there. So it's not perfect. It's a great price. It's a very attractive price. And it's probably more capable than the desktop most of you are using right now to watch this video. However, there's a lot of variety when considering a mini PC. And just Minisforum itself is probably their own main competitor. If you look at the variety of machines they have and price points, both AMD and Intel for gaming or for business or a little of both, something that's budget oriented, something that's mid-grade, and something that's enthusiast level, they have it all. Check out their website, minisforum.com. They are not a sponsor here. They do not pay me. They sent us the unit in exchange for a review under no contract, under no agreement other than I would review it honestly, and I believe I've done that. I do like the unit. I don't care for the Copilot button. I don't care. It's something I'm never going to use. Unless something changes with Copilot in the years ahead, I don't see any purpose. It's not hurting anything to be there. But whatever money and time they spent designing that, I would have liked to have seen gone into accessing the RAM and SSD a little easier. You know, and if you got to cover it up, give me some kind of a quick release mechanism. Don't make me get precision jeweler screwdrivers to take out screws that are 3 millimeters or 4 millimeters in length. That's insane. And then to have 6 of them and to not give any direction on which, I mean, I got lucky taking out the ones I did. I thought all 12 would have to come out. So that's just reverse engineering, right? I'm just looking at it, trying to figure it out. It was not obvious and it was not conspicuous. They did not give us any directions in that regard. So I'm going to chalk this up as not user serviceable. You'd have to be more of an advanced user to service this. This would not be something I would have an average computer owner do, nor would I recommend they do that. If that's a deal killer for you, Minisforum has other models to choose from. On the other hand, if you simply order it with the configuration you want, which is becoming more and more common, we're seeing more and more laptops, the Dell XPS line, the Samsung Galaxy Book line. These are $2,000 and $3,000 laptops like MacBooks that have the RAM soldered in. There's no upgrading it. This means the RAM can be faster, but it also means you better order the maximum you can afford because you'll never be able to upgrade it. You also will likely never have bad RAM. It's way more reliable to have the RAM soldered in. It takes up less room, it generates less heat, and it's faster. Soldered in RAM is superior to everybody but enthusiasts who would open up their computer to upgrade it. In which case, stay away from the ultra high-end creator laptops, whether it's from Mac or Dell or Samsung or others. That is the new normal now, especially as they're trying to get them thinner and thinner. I think we're going to see more and more of this. So those of us who are accustomed to opening up things to upgrade them, that seems to be going away. And if you have that mentality in another 5 or 8 years, you might be considered a dinosaur from the younger people who are like, why would you bother? Right? This stuff is getting so inexpensive and they're giving you so much more than most people need. Like 32 gigs of RAM is probably the maximum most people are going to use between now and the end of lifetime for this product. I'm making an assumption based on the history, assuming it's more of the same type of evolution we're seeing. At least 85% of the people would never require a RAM upgrade from 32 gigs. And if you're that demanding of a power user, you might not be considering a mini PC to begin with. The versatility of the desktop is always still a socketable chip with socketable RAM. And the minute you want to go to something portable, lower power, thinner, smaller, then you have to understand that there's going to be a sacrifice made for that in some way, shape, or form, be it fan noise, limitation and upgradability, serviceability in general. So do not force something to accommodate your needs, or you're going to be an unhappy customer. Find the right item that works as you need it to work. If you're trying to use a spoon as a fork, that's not a problem with the utensil, it's a problem with the user. That's why I'm always emphasizing have the right expectations, because I want you to be happy with your purchase, and I don't know you. So all I can do is show you this is what you get. And some of you are going to say that's perfect. I will never need to upgrade that in its life. Like if I have this the next 6 or 7 or 8 years, that should be fine. Or if I'm only going to have this for 3 or 4 years, it should be fine. On the other hand, if you're somebody who says, I like to get in there and open it up and change the thermal compound and do this and do that, then understand the complexity. And if you're okay with it, go forward. If you're not okay with it, choose something else that better aligns to your preferences and your budget. And you'll be a happy camper regardless of which camp you're in. Okay, I think that'll wrap it up. Just a quick rundown very quickly here in the chat, see if I've missed. Barry Klein says he's already considered a dinosaur by old people. But are you considered a dinosaur by dinosaurs? Let's see if I have any other questions that I've missed. Nick Caffrey says it's a nice little machine for the money if you just want plug and play. Most people just want plug and play. And then again, most people don't watch YouTube channels for tech stuff. So, you know, I have to consider my audience too, right? Christoph says at the bottom of Minisforum website, it says it has 2 SSDs. Yeah, I don't know how the other one would work. It says one's a PCIe 4 and one's a, oh, it's a 2230. Yeah, so one of the little, interesting. Well, appreciate the information, Christoph. I didn't look that closely at it. And I don't think I've ever used a 2230 in my entire career. We might have demonstrated one here one time. It's not a very common size, and it's not commonly used on most desktops and laptops. That's something you typically find in tablets, and I don't work on those as far as like opening them or repairing them. But okay, there it is. John Paul Bacon says if you decide your own rubber feet, you could get slightly taller feet. These are the tallest rubber feet I've ever seen on a mini PC. I've never seen them taller than that. They're at least twice the length of regular rubber feet found on literally any of the other mini PCs. So the idea that you would mention that on the one that has the tallest feet I've ever seen, I find slightly ironic. There's definitely no airflow issues here. There's a lot of room, more room there than any other mini PC we've seen, unless it's like the Starship where it's up off the ground. But, you know, do what you're going to do. All right, I think, let's see. I think that catches us up. Oh, did Frankie B join us? Hi, Frankie. Good to see you, my friend. So I think what should not be overlooked is the performance and the price value this offers. Okay, so if you're more interested in working on the PC than working with the PC, this is not the right PC for you. If you're somebody who actually uses your computer for something important and you need a computer that's reliable, affordable, and right out of the gate, ready to go, which is the vast majority of computer owners, you're going to be hard pressed to find something better at this price point. So depending on your personality, this would be an ideal fit for most people. And the last thing a smaller percentage of people would want due to that limitation. So just keep that in mind. I don't want anybody to buy something under the false impression that it can do something it doesn't do. On the other hand, I do believe the vast majority of computer owners would see this and they would absolutely love it. And there'd be no suggestion for improvement. It would run for its, whatever its rated life is, likely problem free, never needing a repair, always running quiet, and never needing anything upgraded. If you ever reach that point, you might consider simply buying a new upgraded computer. Since you can't change the CPU out on any of these anyway, doing those other upgrades is kind of pointless to an extent. Like once you reach a certain amount of RAM and a certain amount of storage, storage is easy. Just slap USB storage on any of these mini PCs. RAM, if you've got 32 gigs and that's not enough, you likely need a better processor, which means you're in the market for a new PC. Or just stick with a desktop if you're somebody who just is never happy and you always want to upgrade every chance you get. Stay away from mini PCs in general would be a good rule of thumb. So for each different personality type, the good news, or at least from my perspective, is the vast majority of computer buyers never open their computers. Never, not once. And partly how I've been able to stay in business over 30 years. A lot of times when I take the panel off of a computer, that's the first time the panel's ever been removed. That's normal. The people that want to open these up and do that stuff, that's not common. But it doesn't mean it's wrong, but it means the PC makers aren't necessarily accommodating to those individuals. And if they do, they cost more money, right? That's just how it works. So I just want you, again, to have all of the knowledge necessary to make an informed decision that will meet your expectations. That's all that matters. As to whether or not you see a value in this will depend on you, not because you were misled or deceived in any way. All right. Thank you to Mara, of course, for all the help she does behind the scenes and setting up today's video. Thank you to the folks at Minisforum for sending this to us early so we can be the first here on YouTube to do a review. Also, our friends over at Acronis and at RoboForm. Acronis is backup and cloning software. RoboForm is password management software. 30% off to our viewers. On top of their already great prices, you guys get 30% off. If you're a brand new customer, 30% off at RoboForm, and then any customer at Acronis. All the details for the coupon codes and links are in our video notes below this video, as are the links and details about this mini PC and where you can order one. If you have any experience with this Minisforum or any other Minisforum mini PC, be it good or bad, but that it's your experience personally, not somebody you know or somebody you read about online or saw a video somewhere. If you want to share your actual experience with us, good or bad, we'd love to hear from you in the comment section. And I'm leaving somebody. Oh, VIP CDK deals, our friends that offer this very discounted Windows in Office keys. Again, right now, for some reason, PayPal payments, there's some issue with PayPal payments. Hopefully they'll have that back up and running. So if you're in the market for a key and you need to use PayPal, it may be a couple weeks before that's back. I mean, I don't know, I'm guessing, but something's going on there, which I assume they're going to want to fix as soon as possible. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thank you to all of the members, again, all the moderators and all the contributions. And then, oh, I never did check my phone. Let me check my phone. One thing after another. I trying to wrap this video up 10 minutes ago. They're like, what's new, Carey? I know. We have a very generous contribution from our friend Frankie B. Frankie, thank you so much for that. David Everett sent an Amazon gift card. Right on, David. Thank you for the $25 Amazon gift card. G.I. Pollock with a $10.35 PayPal. Thank you for that. And that's everyone. Right on. Well, you guys rock. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Thank you for being a member of this amazing community. A shout out once again, Buster, our friend in Scotland, Oystein, our friend in Norway, Frankie B, our friend in New York. Thank you. I was going to say New York City, but I guess New York. Thank you so much. And to each and every one of you, enjoy your weekend. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.